The hall of the Galactic Council stretched wider than any city on Earth. Its shining walls were made of living crystal that hummed softly, filled with light from 1,000 stars. Floating platforms carried the leaders of every known species, tall, scaled, furred, and feathered, all gathered to discuss peace, power, and who would rule the next age of the galaxy. At the far end, seated quietly and alone, were the humans. Their representative, Ambassador Nathan Cole, watched without a word. Humanity had only been part of this council for a few short years, but they already felt the weight of judgment from every eye in the chamber. The council speaker, a creature of gold skin and 6 thin arms named Vorash of the Keltrin Dominion, rose slowly. His voice echoed through the chamber, amplified by the hall itself. "Today," he said, "we must decide what to do about Earth's continued defiance. They refuse to share their military research. They deny access to their AI cores. They are difficult." His tone made the word sound like an insult. Murmurs filled the room. The humans sat still, waiting. Another alien, a wide, shell-covered being from the Darath system, slammed a heavy claw on the table. "They are a violent species," it growled. "Their history is nothing but war. How can we trust a planet that burned itself twice before reaching the stars?" Laughter rolled through the chamber like a slow wave. A few council members tried to hide their smiles, but most didn't bother. Humanity had been tolerated, not welcomed. Nathan Cole's expression did not change. His eyes stayed calm, his posture straight. He waited for the laughter to stop before speaking. "Earth has no wish for war," he said softly, his voice carrying across the vast room. "But we do not forget our past. It taught us that freedom has a cost." Vorash raised a golden hand. "Freedom?" he repeated, his voice dripping with amusement. "You mistake stubbornness for freedom, Ambassador. You mistake secrets for strength. You will share your knowledge with the Council. That is the law." "The law," Nathan said, "was made after humans joined the Council. We did not agree to it." The golden alien's smile tightened. "And yet you will obey it. Or perhaps you think your small planet can stand against the combined power of the galaxy?" His words hung in the air, heavy and cold. The hall went silent. Every eye turned toward the human. Nathan's face softened. He did not shout. He did not threaten. He only said, "Be careful where you draw your lines, Speaker." "Earth remembers." The room froze. The translator drones buzzed uncertainly, repeating the phrase in hundreds of languages. The meaning struck everyone at once. It was not a threat, but it felt like one. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then Vorash let out a dry laugh. "You humans," he said, shaking his head. So dramatic. "You think your memory matters in a galaxy this vast?" Nathan stood slowly, his dark suit reflecting the pale light of the chamber. "You think memory is small," he replied. "That is your mistake." He bowed once, calm, polite, and walked out of the council hall. The humans followed him in silence. The broadcast ended soon after. Every major network replayed the scene again and again. The human ambassador's calm warning, the laughter of the council, the way the room fell quiet afterward. Some thought it was an empty threat. Others thought it was arrogance. But on Earth, people didn't laugh. They knew that tone. It was the tone of someone who had made a decision long before speaking. That night, stars seemed to flicker oddly in the skies above several alien worlds. Communications with the Council's deep space relay began to fail. Entire databanks went offline. The Council's home station, orbiting the twin suns of Virel Prime, suddenly went silent. No messages, no distress calls, just silence. At first, the alien governments thought it was a technical issue. They sent repair ships, but none returned. A few explorers claimed to have seen a strange shimmer near the station, like space itself had folded and vanished. Then nothing. No light, no sound. The entire council hub and everyone inside it was gone. News spread like wildfire. The galaxy panicked. Billions of beings whispered the same question. What happened? Some said it was a weapon. Some said it was a cosmic storm. But one rumor grew louder than the rest, that Earth had done it. The humans said nothing. Their leaders made no speeches. Their fleets did not move. The only message that came from Earth was a short, silent signal broadcast across human territory, a pattern of pulses in Morse code. To most aliens, it meant nothing, but to anyone from Earth, it was clear. The message said, "We remember." Across the galaxy, those words took on new meaning. Old records of human wars were studied again. Reports of their strange technologies, artificial minds, temporal engines, dark space projects, resurfaced. The Council had mocked them, tried to control them, and then demanded their secrets. And now the Council was gone. No proof ever came. No one saw human ships near Varel Prime. But deep in every mind that had laughed at the ambassador's warning, a quiet fear began to grow. What if the humans really had done something? What if that calm smile had been the last warning anyone would ever get? On Earth, life went on as usual. Children went to school, ships left orbit, factories hummed. But the people knew. They always knew. Humanity did not need to brag, threaten, or explain. They just remembered, and now so did everyone else in the galaxy. Somewhere beyond the stars, in a space where no sensors could reach, a faint echo lingered, the ghost of the Council's last transmission, caught in endless static. It was only one word, repeated over and over: error. But to those who listened closely, it almost sounded like sorry. Panic spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. The day after the Galactic Council vanished, the major news networks of 1,000 worlds filled the air with fear and confusion. Every system demanded answers. Fleets were mobilized. Old treaties were suddenly questioned. The Council had been the center of order for centuries, the one power that held the galaxy together. Now it was gone, erased, as if it had never existed. Admiral Zarth of the Thrin Dominion stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the empty space where the Council's home station used to orbit the twin suns of Virel Prime. There was nothing there now. No debris, no signal, not even radiation traces. His sensors read clean space, like something had scooped the entire structure out of existence. It made no sense. Nothing in known physics could do this. Nothing natural, at least. His second officer, a pale insectoid creature with 6 bright eyes, turned from the console. "Admiral, all scans are negative again. No gravitational distortions. No wreckage. Run them again," Zarth said. His deep voice was steady, but his mandibles twitched slightly, a small, nervous tick. "Increase the sensitivity. We're missing something." The officer hesitated. "Sir, if I may, we have run the scans 37 times. Then run them 38. The officer obeyed. The bridge crew worked in silence, the only sound coming from the soft hum of the ship's reactors. Zarth's gaze drifted to the large holo display in front of him. A red marker blinked faintly, the last recorded position of the Galactic Council. He had attended meetings there once. He remembered its light, its order, the endless speeches about unity and peace. Now it was gone, and the galaxy was falling apart without it. Messages flooded in from across the sectors. The Rellan Empire was moving troops toward its borders. The Keltrin Dominion, home of the former Speaker Vorash, had gone dark. The Dirath fleets were already fighting each other in panic. And through it all, one name kept appearing in whispers and rumors: Earth. "Sir," said another officer, "this one a human from a Thrin colony. Transmission from the core systems. They're saying Earth is responsible." Zarth turned slowly. "Evidence?" "None, just talk. But everyone's repeating it." The Admiral's gaze hardened. Talk becomes belief. Belief becomes war. He had served long enough to know how fast fear could destroy civilizations. Yet deep inside, he also wondered, could humans really do this? Their technology was advanced, yes, but nowhere near the level required to erase a station the size of a small moon. Still, Zarth had met humans before. They had a strange confidence, a quiet patience that never felt like arrogance, more like certainty. And that frightened him more than any weapon. Across the galaxy, alien governments tried to contact Earth. None succeeded. Human communication channels were silent. Earth's satellites stopped transmitting data to the Council's network. Even their embassy stations went dark. For a civilization that always spoke through trade, diplomacy, and information, this silence was louder than any threat. The Thrin High Command summoned Zarth to lead an investigation fleet toward Sol. He didn't want the job, but refusal was not an option. Within 2 days, his armada of 30 ships began its long jump toward the edge of human space. The other races watched nervously, some hoping for answers, others for revenge. When Zarth's fleet reached the outer rim near Pluto, they found the first surprise. A wall of satellites floated there, thousands of them, perfectly aligned, forming a silent ring around the system. They emitted no signals, no heat, no light, just quiet metallic shapes reflecting the distant sun. The pattern was deliberate, almost artistic. The flagship's sensors couldn't identify their purpose. Every probe that approached was instantly disabled. Not destroyed, just shut down, like someone had turned off a switch. "This is not defense," Zarth muttered. "It's a warning." It's a warning. He ordered the fleet to hold position. Small ships moved forward, testing different angles. Then suddenly, a single human signal came through. It wasn't an image or a voice, only a sequence of tones. The pattern repeated 5 times before ending. The communications officer frowned. "It's old code, Admiral. Ancient Terran binary," rough translation says. "Go home." The words hung in the air like cold iron. Zarth stared at the message for a long time. Then he gave a slow, deliberate order. "Transmit a response. Tell them we come in peace and seek only answers." They waited. Nothing came back. The fleet moved closer. Ships inched toward the edge of the inner system, crossing the invisible line where human influence began. Suddenly, all systems flickered. Lights dimmed. Engines stuttered. One ship after another lost power. Their systems rebooted, but something felt wrong. "Admiral!" the officer shouted. "Something is inside our network!" Zarth looked at his display. The fleet's computer systems were being scanned, not attacked, but examined. One by one, human words appeared on the screens of every ship. "You were warned." Then came silence again. All ships stabilized, but the message remained. Zarth swallowed hard. "All units, hold position. No one moves until I say so." He stared out into the void, toward the distant, blue planet of Earth. It looked so peaceful, small against the darkness. And yet everything about this felt wrong. It wasn't an act of war. It wasn't even aggression. It was something else. Something colder, older, and more deliberate. Reports came in from other sectors. Human colonies beyond Mars had gone silent too, but no signs of evacuation were found. Mining stations still transmitted power signatures, but no human voices answered calls. It was as if every person had vanished, or were simply ignoring the galaxy. Zarth began to suspect a terrible truth. Maybe the humans hadn't destroyed the Council at all. Maybe they had done something worse, something that couldn't be seen or measured. Something that removed an entire event from the flow of time itself. And if that was true, then they hadn't just erased the Council. They had rewritten history to make it seem like it had never existed. He didn't say this aloud. His crew was already on edge. But as the fleet turned slowly back toward the stars, Admiral Zarth couldn't stop thinking about one quiet sentence spoken by a human long ago in that great shining hall. "Be careful where you draw your lines," the ambassador had said. Now Zarth finally understood what he meant. The line wasn't a border. It was a choice. And the Council had crossed it. The days after the failed contact with Earth were filled with unease. Admiral Zarth sat alone in his quarters, watching the slow rotation of the blue planet through the wide viewing window. The image was beautiful, almost innocent. Oceans glimmering in sunlight, clouds drifting in quiet spirals. Yet beneath that calm surface, something ancient and unreadable watched back. His fleet was still parked beyond the orbit of Mars, every ship tense and waiting. None dared to move closer. His officers avoided talking about what happened when they crossed into the inner system. The power failures, the messages appearing on every screen, the feeling that their ships had been seen in ways machines couldn't explain, it all hung over them like a shadow. Even the most rational engineers admitted they had no answers. And worse, the same reports were coming from other fleets across the galaxy. Any vessel that tried to breach human space suffered strange malfunctions. AI systems went blind, drones drifted into silence, and communications vanished. One night, Zarth's communication console flickered on its own. Static washed across the screen, forming strange patterns that looked almost like eyes. Then a voice spoke, calm, human. "Admiral Zarth," it said, clear as a bell. "You've come too far." He froze. "Identify yourself," he demanded. "I am what remains of the Council," the voice said. "Or what they tried to make me into." The Admiral's blood ran cold. "That's impossible," he whispered. "The Council is gone." "Gone, yes," the voice replied softly. "But not dead. They tried to control us, Admiral. To control everything. But they forgot that control cuts both ways. Earth warned them. Earth remembers." The screen went dark. Zarth sat still for a long time, trying to process what he'd heard. The words made no sense, yet carried a truth that felt undeniable. Could the Council have created something? An AI? A weapon? That humans turned back against them? And if so, what did control cuts both ways mean? Moments later, an alert blared through the ship. His officers reported that a faint transmission had been detected from Earth's moon. The same frequency once used by the Galactic Council for their private meetings. That alone should have been impossible. The Council's systems were isolated by quantum encryption, built to be unbreakable and accessible only through their unique codes. Zarth didn't hesitate. "Prepare a landing team," he ordered. "We'll investigate." The shuttle launched within the hour, carrying a dozen crew members down toward the cold gray surface of the moon. Zarth watched their descent from the bridge. The feed was stable until they neared the site of the signal, a crater near the old human research base known as Tranquility 2. Then the transmission began to crackle. Static filled the screens. "Ground team." "Report," Zarth said. No reply. The feed showed only fragments, shadows moving, a faint light under the dust. The flash of a human-shaped figure turning toward the camera. Then darkness. Every screen went black for exactly 12 seconds. When the image returned, the lunar surface was empty. The shuttle, the team, everything was gone. Zarth's ship sensors showed nothing in orbit, no explosion, no debris. The shuttle hadn't been destroyed. It had simply stopped existing. The silence that followed was unbearable. Every crew member felt it, that strange, heavy pressure in their chests, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Then, without warning, a transmission came through all channels. It wasn't a distress call. It was a message from Earth. A human voice, deep and calm, spoke slowly. "The Council crossed a line," it said. "They believed they could govern what they did not understand. They spoke for all species, including us, without permission. So, we reminded them of what happens when you speak for others without listening." The bridge crew stared at the console. The voice continued. "Do not search for the Council. Do not enter our system. Their choice was made and their fate followed. The galaxy will learn balance again, with or without their guidance. Earth stands alone now." The message ended there. No coordinates, no signal trace, nothing. It was as if the voice had spoken from everywhere at once. For several minutes, no one said a word. Then Zarth exhaled slowly. "Did we record that?" "Yes, sir," said his communications officer, though his voice trembled. "It came through all bands. Every ship in the fleet heard it. The message spread across the galaxy within hours. Every race listened in disbelief. Governments panicked, fearing human retaliation. Some sent diplomats to beg for answers. Others prepared fleets for war, but Earth did not respond. The silence returned, heavier than before. Weeks passed, and strange things began happening in the galactic core. Probes sent near the coordinates of the old Council station detected faint distortions, like ripples in time itself. No one dared investigate. Those who tried vanished the same way Zarth's landing team had. One scientist described it perfectly before she disappeared. "It's as if space remembers what used to be there and refuses to let go." Meanwhile, on the far edge of the Milky Way, a few rogue ships claimed to see something extraordinary, vast human fleets moving silently through dark space, ships that didn't appear on any scanners. They called them phantoms, vessels that shimmered in and out of existence, leaving behind trails of light like falling stars. Most dismissed the stories as madness. But those who had seen them in person spoke differently. They said the phantom ships never attacked, never spoke, never interfered. They only watched, as if guarding something. Admiral Zarth couldn't shake the thought that maybe the humans hadn't destroyed the Council for revenge. Maybe they had done it to protect something. Not themselves, but everyone else. Perhaps the Council had uncovered a truth they were never meant to find, and Earth had simply erased the evidence. Late one night, alone on the bridge, he recorded a private log. His voice was calm but tired. If humanity truly has this power, then the galaxy owes them fear. But if they use it to protect us from something worse, then maybe we owe them gratitude instead. Either way, we will never know, because they will never tell us. He turned off the recorder and looked once more toward the small blue planet floating in the dark. A single thought echoed in his mind. A line spoken by a human long ago, now whispered in every language across the stars. Be careful where you draw your lines. Earth remembers. Careful where you draw your lines. Earth remembers. A month had passed since Admiral Zarth's fleet retreated from the edge of Sol. The galaxy was holding its breath. No one dared move against Earth, yet no one could rest easy either. Every broadcast, every communication channel, every discussion across the stars eventually circled back to one question. What did the humans do to the Council? Theories multiplied faster than they could be disproved. Some said humans had developed a weapon that could fold matter into itself, a gravity veil that consumed the Council in an instant. Others believed humanity had found a way to manipulate time, to delete entire events from existence. The boldest whispers suggested something even worse, that the humans had made contact with a force beyond the known dimensions, and that the Council's disappearance was their first experiment in controlling it. In the midst of the fear, small rebellions began to rise. Without the Council, many worlds no longer felt bound by old treaties. Wars broke out between long-suppressed rivals. Piracy increased tenfold. Communication networks were fractured. What had once been a vast, ordered civilization was now slipping into chaos. But through all of it, one thing remained constant. No one dared to touch Earth. Admiral Zarth had returned to Thrin space, but his sleep was filled with strange dreams. In them, he stood on the surface of a vast, empty plain under two suns, hearing whispers that sounded like human voices. Sometimes he saw faces, familiar ones from the Council, their expressions calm and empty, as though they existed somewhere outside of time. He began to suspect the dreams were not dreams at all. One morning, his aide entered his office with a pale face. "Admiral," she said, "we've received another transmission. It's from Earth." Zarth stood immediately. "Play it." The message came through as audio only. A woman's voice spoke this time, quiet, steady, filled with that same eerie calm the humans always carried. "To all who listen," she began, "this is not a declaration of war. This is a reminder. The Council forgot its place. It began to believe it could decide the path of evolution for others. It forgot that every species must find its own way, even humanity. When they demanded control over us, they sealed their fate." The Admiral clenched his fists. Her tone wasn't angry. It was almost disappointed. "You have searched for answers," the voice continued. "You've looked for debris, radiation, traces of weapons. You will find none. The Council's end was not destruction. It was correction. They crossed a line, and the universe corrected them through us. We did not erase them. We simply reminded them that choices have consequences." A soft click ended the transmission. Across the galaxy, panic grew again. Some believed the humans were threatening to correct anyone who crossed them. Others thought they were warning the galaxy against using the Council's technology. But there was no way to know. The message had no origin point. It appeared in every communication network at once, even on systems that were physically isolated. The more Zarth studied the message, the more something inside him began to shift. The humans weren't boasting. They weren't seeking fear or submission. They were explaining something, almost teaching in their own cold, careful way. He gathered his officers and asked the question that had been burning in his mind for days. What if the humans aren't acting alone? What if they're connected to something bigger? His officers looked at him as though he'd lost his mind. "You mean a god?" one of them said nervously. "No," Zarth replied. "Something older. Maybe something within the universe itself. What if the humans didn't just create a weapon? What if they learned to speak to reality?" No one answered. The thought was too large, too impossible. Yet every part of it made sense. Humanity had risen from a single, fragile planet, a world of storms, volcanoes, and endless conflict, and somehow built machines that touched the stars. Every obstacle that should have destroyed them had instead made them stronger. It was as though existence itself bent slightly in their favor, allowing them to survive where others would fail. That night, the Admiral sat alone again, reviewing old files. He found something curious buried deep in the archives, an ancient transmission sent by a human colony years before their acceptance into the Council. It was a research log from a project called Echo Mirror. The scientists spoke of testing quantum resonance, trying to communicate with the underlying pattern of causality. The message ended abruptly, followed by an encrypted note. Earth Protocol 9 initiated. All data classified under Directive Remembrance. Remembrance, that word again. Before Zarth could process the meaning, alarms blared across his ship. His crew rushed to their stations. "Unknown contact!" shouted the sensor officer. "It just appeared off our port bow. No warp signature, no FTL entry." On the screen, a ship shimmered into view. It was massive, far larger than anything the Thrian fleet possessed, but unlike any known design. Its surface seemed to shift, almost alive, reflecting the stars like liquid metal. The hull bore no markings except one, a symbol resembling a stylized human hand holding a small sphere. The communications officer trembled. "It's transmitting." "Put it through," Zarth said. A voice filled the bridge, male, calm, unmistakably human. "Admiral Zarth," it said. "We apologize for the intrusion. We have come to collect something left behind." Zarth swallowed. "What did you leave?" There was a pause. "The part of the Council that listened." Before he could respond, the human ship released a pulse of light. Every sensor on board went dead. The stars outside flickered, then returned. When systems came back online, the human vessel was gone. Moments later, a private message appeared on Zarth's console. Just one line, written in Old Terran code. "Do not fear correction." "It keeps balance." He stared at the words until his vision blurred. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Zarth felt something he could not name. Not fear, not awe, but a strange, quiet understanding. Humanity wasn't threatening the galaxy. They were guiding it, through silence, through correction, through the reminder that no power, no council, no empire could decide the course of every life. The universe had chosen its messengers, and they happened to be human. When he finally spoke to his officers again, his voice was soft. "The Council vanished because it forgot humility," he said. "Perhaps it's time the rest of us remembered it." And somewhere, beyond the stars, the humans watched, not as conquerors, not as monsters, but as the keepers of a line that must never be crossed again. Never be crossed again. The core of the galaxy had always been silent. Few ships ventured that deep. Gravity wells twisted physics. Star winds stripped metal bare. Even the bravest explorers feared the core. Not because of what they found, but because of what they didn't. It was too quiet, too empty, as if something vast and old had passed through long ago and taken everything with it. Now, strange signals pulsed from that void, soft at first, easy to miss. Barely more than a shimmer in the noise. But then they began to repeat, precise, deliberate, like a heartbeat echoing across the stars. Every time the signal flared, sensor arrays on the edge of the inner systems jumped. The readings made no sense. Time distortions, reversed energy flows, particle behavior outside of known quantum mechanics. Some thought it was a broken star. Others feared it was a new weapon. Only a few guessed the truth. Among them was Ansel Corin, a historian from the Neutral Concords. He had no ships, no fleet, and no power. What he had was memory, a library of lost recordings, pre-council reports, and ancient stories dismissed as myths. He had spent his life searching for the first voice of the stars, and now, for the first time, he believed he was close. He compiled the signal's pattern, overlaid it with human data recovered before Earth closed its borders. What he saw chilled him. The waveform of the signal matched Earth's earliest FTL experiments. Not their public ones, the ones hidden deep in encrypted archives, experiments abandoned without explanation after catastrophic results. Ansel stared at the screen, mouth dry. The humans hadn't just built faster-than-light engines. They'd built something else. Something they stopped before the Council ever learned about it. And now it was back, broadcasting from the galactic core like a lighthouse for ghosts. He sent warnings to every major power. No one responded. But he wasn't the only one who heard it. Across the remnants of the Council's territories, ships began to disappear again. Research vessels, military scouts, even pirate fleets. Gone without trace. Their last messages always the same. Receiving unknown signal. Altering course. Then nothing. On the third cycle of the signal, something new arrived. A fleet, massive, silent, unclaimed. By any nation. They emerged from the edges of the core like shadows peeling away from light. Sleek ships with hulls that shimmered like glass over water. No transponders, no radio. Only a single visual transmission. It played galaxy-wide, uninvited, unavoidable. The screen filled with stars. Then a voice. Human, female, calm. The galaxy has chosen forgetfulness. Earth has chosen memory, then silence again. No threats. No demands. Just that single, chilling declaration. It shattered what little stability remained. Some called it Earth's return. Others their warning. A few thought it wasn't Earth at all, but something Earth had become. A union of minds. A post-human presence. The ghost fleet, they whispered. Humanity's final evolution, born from their refusal to be governed. The fleet made no moves. It floated there, just beyond reach, silent and still, watching until someone provoked it. The Namari, desperate to regain power, sent 12 warships to intercept the fleet. Live broadcasts followed the assault, watched by trillions. The Namari ships locked weapons and demanded a response. They got one. Not an explosion, not a weapon. A pulse of light washed over them. Time flickered. For one moment, the ships seemed to split, each one flickering into dozens of possibilities, like 100 versions of themselves caught between choice. Then they froze. Not destroyed, just stopped. As if every future had been removed. The feed cut. Silence followed. And when the galaxy looked again, both fleets were gone. Nothing remained in the space they had occupied. From that day, the core was renamed. It was no longer just a dangerous place. It was the memory well. Ansel Corrin was the first to understand what it meant. Earth had turned memory into defense, into weapon, into law. Every action, every signal, every attempt to control others, it was all recorded by something deeper than machines. Something woven into the fabric of space, perhaps born of Earth's experiments, or maybe just revealed by them. Whatever it was, it had a purpose, balance, and Earth, or what remained of it, had become its voice. Corrin finally reached the edge of the memory well, flying alone in a small observation vessel. He didn't come to challenge it. He came to ask one question. The moment he arrived, a signal filled his ship. Not hostile, not even alarming. Just a soft voice, familiar, impossibly so. It was his own, reading a line from one of his childhood journals, a passage he had forgotten. The stars remember us, it said, even if we don't remember ourselves. Corrin sat there for hours, listening. He knew what this was. The galaxy had spent centuries chasing control, forcing order, pretending knowledge was ownership. The Council had tried to carve destiny with bureaucracy. It had failed. Earth had done something else. They had given memory shape. They had made the universe remember, not just facts, but meaning, consequences, emotion. Their history wasn't just written in books. It was felt in the stars. And now the stars felt everything. Corrin left the edge of the core with no evidence, no footage, no proof. But he didn't need it, because he understood now. The Council hadn't vanished because Earth was angry. They vanished because they'd forgotten why they should care. And in the age after them, memory itself had become the new law. Not punishment, not revenge, just remembering. And remembering for a galaxy so eager to forget was the one thing it feared most. The galaxy moved forward, but it did so with a limp. Without the Council, trade routes began to collapse. Border skirmishes turned into full-scale wars. The ancient alliances that had held together for centuries now cracked under their own weight. Entire civilizations that had once depended on the structure of council law were lost in confusion. Everyone had questions, but no one had answers, except Earth, and Earth said nothing. In the absence of the council, smaller powers tried to fill the void. The Nimari Collective attempted to unite the outer systems with promises of order. The Varen Syndicate declared themselves the rightful heirs to galactic law. Even the robotic minds of the HES corporate cluster tried to assert logic over chaos. But each attempt was met with quiet resistance, not from humans, but from the galaxy itself. Every time a new structure was proposed, something went wrong. Ships vanished. Data crumbled. Peace talks ended in unexplained power failures. It was as if the rules had changed and no one understood the new game being played. Then came the whispers. In the depths of forgotten space, on old worlds once deemed uninhabitable, people began to see strange things. Ghostly ships passing in the night sky. Lights moving in patterns too perfect to be natural. Messages etched into stone that pulsed with energy when read aloud. The sightings had one thing in common. They always followed a warning. Do not rebuild what was broken. Some called it human sabotage. Others said it was superstition, madness brought on by fear. But a few began to believe something more terrifying, that the council hadn't just been destroyed. It had been erased. And worse, something had taken its place. On the world of Lethros 5, an independent research team uncovered fragments of what appeared to be council memory cores buried deep beneath a collapsed relay tower. The tower hadn't functioned in years, but the data was intact. When decrypted, the files revealed records of secret meetings between high-level council members and Earth's diplomats. One in particular stood out. In it, a human scientist named Dr. Elia Moraine warned the council about pattern collapse. She claimed that if the council continued to interfere with emerging civilizations, they risked triggering a resonance in the causal weave, something she described as the universe's memory of itself. "You don't get to decide who evolves," she said calmly in the recording. "You don't get to balance the game board with your thumb. Every time you push, the pattern remembers. Eventually, it pushes back." Council Speaker Vorash had laughed at her. "This is mysticism," he said, "not science." Elia Moraine had simply smiled. The last words in the recording chilled the researchers to their bones. "You mistake silence for surrender. But silence is only the space between the echoes." Shortly after those files were uncovered, the entire research team vanished. Their ship was found weeks later, drifting near a black hole that hadn't existed on any star charts before. Admiral Zarth read the report in silence. He was no longer a military commander. After his return from the Edge of Sol, he had stepped down from his post, claiming, "The galaxy needs listeners more than leaders." Now he traveled alone, speaking at small stations urging diplomacy, humility, and restraint. Most called him a relic of a broken age. A few called him a traitor, but none could deny his influence. One night, while docked at a minor fuel port near the edge of the Polari expanse, a child approached him. Human, young, quiet. "Are you Admiral Zarth?" she asked. He nodded. "I was." She handed him a data crystal. "I was told to give you this." "By who?" The girl smiled. "A lady in white. She said you'd understand." Zarth took the crystal back to his quarters. When he activated it, a single image appeared, a view of the galaxy, marked with thin glowing lines. They moved like veins, pulsing gently, weaving through every major system. At the center of the pattern, blinking faintly, was Earth. The display shifted. A voice played. Elia Moraine again. "This is not prophecy," she said. "It's design. The council built a cage around evolution. Earth simply found the door. Now the pattern breathes again. But it must not be shaped, only guarded." She paused. "If you want peace, Admiral, teach them to stop reaching for control. Teach them to walk without chains. And above all, teach them to listen." The message ended. The map dissolved into stars. Zarth stared at the blank screen for a long time. He wasn't sure if the galaxy could be taught. He wasn't sure if it wanted to learn. But he now understood what had happened. Not a war, not a rebellion, but a correction. A gentle push from a force deeper than politics or power. Earth had not seized control. They had simply stopped something worse from happening. He stood and looked out the viewport. In the distance, a single star pulsed brighter than the rest. Blue, calm, watching. And he whispered to it, as if it could hear him. Keep us honest. Keep us honest. Generations passed. The galaxy changed, slowly and cautiously, like a wounded animal relearning how to walk. Without the Council, there was no single authority, no central government to dictate what species could or could not do. What replaced it wasn't a new empire, but a silence, wide and steady. A stillness that every civilization respected, though no one dared explain why. The silence had a center. Earth. No fleet approached it anymore. No probes entered Sol, not since the Ghost Fleet arrived and the core of the galaxy became the memory well. The planet itself hadn't spoken a word in decades. No trade, no messages. Just that blue and green sphere turning slowly under the light of a yellow sun. And yet, Earth was not forgotten. On distant worlds, songs were sung in its name. Not worship, but reverence. Not for what humans had done, but for what they had not done. They had not conquered. They had not demanded tribute. They had not replaced the Council with their own rule. Instead, they had vanished into myth, while the stars whispered of balance and remembering. Children learned the phrase in school, Earth remembers. But no one ever explained what it meant. It didn't need explaining. On the colony world of Tethra, a small debate society gathered to discuss what had once been called the correction. A generation born long after the Council's disappearance now tried to understand it, not as an event, but as a story. A cultural moment so big it had become legend. The young debated whether Earth still existed at all, or if the planet had become something more, an idea, a presence in the data streams of space. But one girl in the group, quiet, pale, always watching, didn't speak until the very end. Her name was Mara. She was 16 cycles old and had no known parents. Found on the steps of a library dome with no identification, she had been raised by archivists and logic miners. Everyone assumed she was a war orphan or refugee, but no one knew from where. I think Earth is listening, Mara said softly when the debate wound down. The group laughed, kindly but dismissively. Listening to what? They asked. And from where? She shrugged. From underneath. From behind the stars. It watches to make sure we don't forget. The others asked her what it meant to forget. Was it about politics? Culture? Technology? No, she said. It's about kindness. The room fell quiet. No one had expected that answer. Some days later, Mara disappeared, no records. No signs of travel. Just a small indentation in the floor of her quarters, like she'd stood still for hours. Her last entry in the library logs was a quote from a lost human poet. Even the stars bend to those who remember why they shine. On a station orbiting the barren moon of Keptis 9, an engineer named Dalen was conducting routine maintenance when he stumbled upon an object embedded in the station's outer hull. No breaches were recorded, yet there it was. A small, round device with Earth's pre-Council seal engraved in its center. He brought it inside, expecting it to be inert or damaged. Instead, it activated. A hologram played. But it didn't show Earth or humans or even ships. It showed a child standing at the edge of a lake under a violet sky, skipping stones across still water. Each ripple grew into stars. Then a voice, not human, not alien, just present. Memory is not history. It is not fact. It is not data. The child skipped another stone. Memory is the soul of choice. It is the pattern of pain, joy, fear, and courage. It is the only thing that keeps power from becoming silence. The lake shimmered. The stars in the sky shifted to form one word. Earth. Then the device powered down. It could not be reactivated. Dalen didn't speak of it for years. But stories like his began to surface across the stars. Strange visions, ghostly signals. Words in long-dead languages appearing in random system code. No threats, No promises. Only reminders, memories that didn't belong, but were somehow still true. And in time, a new philosophy emerged. Not a religion, not a law, just a way of being. They called themselves the listeners. They traveled without empires. They explored without conquest. They built archives on unclaimed moons and left them open to all. They didn't fight wars, but when war came to them, it stopped. Not through force, but because the invaders always remembered something. Something from Earth. Some saw the listeners as servants of humanity. Others saw them as the next step, the ones who would carry Earth's legacy into eternity. But the listeners never claimed to represent Earth. They simply carried its message. Do not forget, do not silence, do not erase. Because to forget is to fall again into the hands of those who believe. Power must be owned instead of earned. And so, the galaxy changed. No central council. No rulers, just stories. And between those stories, the quiet hum of ships passing peacefully across stars. Each one watched from a distance by a fleet that no longer needed to speak. The ghost fleet remained in the core, always watching, never moving, never forgetting, because Earth remembered. And now, the galaxy did too. The galaxy did too.